All right, Coach, thanks for joining us today. Wrapping up camp here at the end of this week. How's things been for your position group?
Wide receivers, we've been getting better. Obviously, it's an inexperienced group. A lot of guys that haven't played. You've had a lot of really good receivers here, the latest being DeMario Douglas. So obviously, guys have step up and take on a larger role with that. So it's been good. I think they're learning, they're developing in a way that I want to see. So it's been good so far.
Noah and CJ are two guys that have been around for a few years. Maybe had some injury concerns previous years. How do you think they're doing so far in camp, and are they staying healthy so far?
I think they're doing well. CJ and Noah are both being leaders that we need them to be in that room. So that's been good to see. They've been staying relatively healthy. Obviously, it's football. Everybody gets nicks and bruises and sore, but both of them are doing really well, playing at a high level, and I hope to see that continue into the season.
Who outside of those guys, I know there were some injuries at your position that Coach Chadwell's talked about. Who outside of those two that you just mentioned have kind of started to separate themselves?
I think E.J. Smoot is having a great camp, just being really consistent. I think Colin Austin, as a young player, has showed a lot of flash. Obviously, he's still got some stuff to learn, and he's still developing and growing. But I think he can be really good with the ball in his hands as well. And so him and Smoot are doing really good. I think Markel Fortenberry, these past few practices, has really started to turn it on, just being a big body and playing big. With him, it's always about being fast and physical because he has the tools. Now it's developing that mindset, and I think he's moving in the right direction. So I can see him being a guy, in the coming years to be really good as well.
When you see these guys flash, is it just as simple as catching the football, or what things are you watching?
I think it's watching it come together. I think, my favorite part is being a coach is the light bulb moments. And so you watch a guy, maybe he's struggling against a certain coverage or against a certain DB, or struggling using a certain technique, and then you kind of see them use it and it works, and they start adding it to their toolbox. They become consistent. You start seeing the light bulb moments where they figure things out, and I think that's where you start getting those flashes because now they're playing consistent because they know not only what they're doing but how to do it, play in and play out.
Do you feel confident about the amount of guys that you have in the room that can go out there and perform in light of some of those aforementioned injuries?
You're always going to feel like you don't have enough guys. The mindset everywhere I've been is play with what you have, right? I can't go out there and buy another receiver or get another one at this point. So if we got 3 healthy ones, we're going to roll out there with 3. At Coastal, I think we played one year, we had like 4 healthy receivers, and we just held our breath and prayed to God that nothing happened and nothing did. And so, that's my mindset. Whoever's out there will play. We'll personnel things out. So, we might play 6 or 7 guys one week. We might only play like 3 or 4 the next week. It's really just game plan to game plan, keeping these guys healthy. And the more guys are healthy, obviously, the more guys that can play.
How has it challenged you or tested your patience as a coach, like losing a few guys and new offense that they're learning?
I think the hardest part as a coach is you see what guys are capable of doing, and you struggle when they're not achieving that play in and play out, or maybe day in and day out, the inconsistency, because that's the hardest thing. Is like once you do it right, you have to be able to sustain that and continue to do it right. And so anytime you're working with young guys like Markel, like Colin, they're great players, they're great athletes. That's why they're here, and they're doing a great job. But it's about being consistent. I always tell people in the NFL, it's not always necessarily the fastest guy, the strongest guy, or what have you. It's the guys that can go in and day out and be the most consistent, and that coaches know each and every day that they're going to get everything they got out of it. People are not going to pay you millions of dollars to be good sometimes. They pay you millions of dollars to be good every single time you go out there. So that's kind of the mindset that we got to develop and have in our room.
When you mention fast and physical, how much of that is playing to catch the ball physically? How much of that is the blocking, in particular the run blocking?
I think it's everything. When I coach, I coach a first aggressive mentality. Like, we're not waiting on a block. We're not waiting for a DB to come down and make contact with us. We want to make contact with the DB. When the ball's in the air, we want to make contact. We want to go get that ball. We don't want to wait on it and let a DB come knock it down. When we're working routes, get hands off the DB. I feel like, in general, wide receiver is seen as like this pretty position where you don't get touched and you run around fast and you catch the ball and score touchdowns. It's not that. Like, you're gonna be in a fight with a DB across whose whole job is keep you from catching the ball. So it's like you got to be physical and have that mindset that, hey, we're mano y mano. This is a boxing match, and that through these 4 quarters I'm gonna come out on top.
Aaron was a guy that was kind of a late addition to the room this summer, but coming from Coastal, he should be familiar with this system. What do you feel like he's brought to your position group so far?
Probably the biggest thing AB brings is just his knowledge. Having played in the offense for 4 or 5 years, like, he knows it. He knows it inside and out. When I first got to Coastal in 2020, he had already been there for a year or two. He was teaching me the plays, and so He's a guy that you can depend on to be that coach on the field. You know, I think he brings a certain personality that I think we need in this room, a guy that has a little bit more edge, a little bit more seriousness to him because he's been through it. He knows what it looks like to go on, 11-game runs and have to dig it out, And so I think he just brings that little bit of maturity and older presence in that room that we need with all those young guys.
I think I saw Trayon Sibley out there with you guys the week before. Maybe is he still working with the receiver? That kind of the plan for him?
Yeah. I think Trayon, he's doing a really good job. Obviously, he's balancing things too, just trying to get healthy, little nicks and scrapes. But I think he's been really good. He's played much better this camp than he's played in the spring, and so that was good to see his development and watch him get better as he understands the offense more.
Errol Rogers, a transfer, came in the spring. What have you seen out of him so far during camp?
Just consistency. I think, like you talk about older guys, just being consistent. He knows what to do. He's another guy that, I think has a pretty good grasp on offense pretty early in these stages, and so I think he's going to be a guy that we can lean on, depend on when the season get here when, third down, when you need a guy to catch the ball. He has really strong hands. He plays physical. He knows the game inside and out. And I think, he played quarterback, so he sees the game from a different perspective, and I think that's been a good thing to have as well.
You mentioned third down, and that was something that Coach didn't shy away from. I think in his first presser, he said, we don't know who we're throwing the ball to on third down. Now, that was like 2 weeks ago. Do you guys feel like you have kind of a better idea?
Yeah, I think, honestly, we have a lot of young guys, like I say, that's going to play this year, but they're talented. I think it's about putting them in position to where they can be successful. In the past, we were fortunate enough at Coastal to have the all-time leading receiver in Coastal Carolina history, and so you knew who you were throwing the ball to on third down. You knew you were throwing the ball to on first down. You knew you were throwing the ball to on second down. It didn't really matter, right, because he was that guy. I think now it's less about throwing the ball to certain people and how can, if Colin does this well, Markel does this well, how can I put Colin in a position to run these routes and do these things? How can I put Markel in a position to do these things? Instead of having one guy that can do it all, I think it's going to be a lot more by committee than it has been in the past.
How much do you have to coach dependability, toughness, consistency? How much of that is stuff that you have identified already in the process of recruiting guys to stay around or come in?
I think it's the only thing you coach really in college football. You can coach X and O's and all that stuff, but really, college is different than high school, and that's what you have to teach. How do you teach somebody who's been the best player in Pop Warner, middle school, high school, everything their whole life, now they come here and they're freshmen and they're struggling? Like, how do you teach that mindset? How do you teach them to overcome that adversity? How do you teach them to be dependable day in and day out? I think that's the main thing you coach, because these guys are good players. Everybody knows that. That's why that's why they're here. It's why they're playing college football. It's how do you get the most out of them every single day? How can you get them to be more consistent? How can you get them to have that championship mindset and push past their limits than they ever had before? I think that's the part of coaching that's the hardest part.